So there was a time when I believe, and honestly, I should probably, people are very valid to say this. There is one thumbnail in particular that I can say had something from there, which is Simulacra 2, I believe. So it was still composited into other things, but I was like, oh, it's good at making nightmare faces, so maybe I'll make a nightmare faces. And I totally acknowledge I haven't even thought about that until this all came up. So I'm perfectly happy to go back, change that, get rid of the thumbnail. In fact, I'll do that after this stream, right? This is all just something that I was posting as of this morning. So I'm happy to do that. But this is back when it first came out. I'm not training models on a Mac. I'm not training models at all. That's the misconception that people have. I'm not making AI models. That's not what I'm doing. I'm making sploosh, kaboom. I'm making visual effects in my bathroom. What's crazy about that? I'm making visual effects. I don't use ChatGPT anymore. I forgot to mention that. I don't use it anymore. I can't entirely say that it was out of selflessness, but I don't use it anymore because it was dumb. It was fucking stupid, and it started to piss me off. And then I started to think about it, and I was just like, God, this is such a pain in the ass. Yeah. So that's what I'll say about that. I think that, see, this is the thing. This is the thing that people seem to misinterpret about it. I'm not saying I never used it. I'm not denying that I never used it. I would be completely hypocritical if I said that I never used it because I found the technology fascinating. But I'm also not going to say like it's entirely the thing. I haven't used it for months. Yeah. I can't say that I've never used any other language model either, but it's just like, it's the limitations of it. And the diminishing returns are bad, and then the environmental factor is bad, and it's all a big rat race with Grok trying to be the best, and that's what I keep saying about Mecha Hitler. And I'm not saying it's Mecha Hitler. Grok said it was Mecha Hitler. Grok! So that's what it is, yeah. I think. Okay. Can you discuss the environmental impact comparing AI usage to almond farming? Fuck, I'd have to know what almond farming. I think I've heard like it's like a gallon per almond. So yeah, I can talk about that. People have very valid concerns because they hear very true stories, I want to say, about how AI is polluting towns. What people don't know is how that connects, right? So there's a misunderstanding, and I'm not saying I don't think this is not invalidating anything that anybody has concerns. This is not like absolving the environmental factors. This is a problem, right? So the almond comparison comes from data centers' water usage, right? And so people don't often know why that water usage is part of it. But the reason the data centers use water is because they use evaporative cooling, right? There's so much computing power in these data centers that cooling them is the biggest issue that they have, besides the power. Now it's power and chips and whatnot, but let's just break it down a little bit. They use water because they evaporate it. And you'll get people, I don't know the full effects of this, but people will be like, oh, it's evaporating water. That's what happens all the time. There's a whole thing about taking water from freshwater sources to use for this stuff. And that is where the environmental impact of taking water from, because there are drought-stricken areas where some of these data centers are. And if they're taking all the fresh water, it's not an unlimited supply. It has to rain or ice has to melt for it to get the fresh water. I don't know the full science of it, but that's where people's concerns with that comes into play. I don't know enough about it to have exact details about it, but that's why people are concerned. And that was a concern even before AI was a thing. The thing with Grok and Mecha Hitler, is a power issue. That's less about the cooling. That's about power generation. The reason, and very valid reason, that it is actually polluting a town is because they have, I believe it's 37. Can someone confirm that? Is it 37 gigantic like gas generators, or I forget what exact type of fuel it is, but it's a carbon burning fuel. They have 37, maybe more, honestly. I have no idea, but I think the number I heard last was 37. Yeah, 30. Okay, someone confirmed maybe that was 37 or 35 67, I wouldn't be surprised if they increased it, but let's just say 37. They have all these gas generators that are burning because they need power, because they built that data center so quickly in the place that they could that they needed more power. And so they trucked in gas generators to be able to burn and make energy for the data center because the power grid wasn't able to keep it. And so all of that burning all the time is literally polluting the immediate area next to it because it's everything. It's all of that. That is perfectly valid. 67. Is it 67? 37. 67. Was that the gas of 87? Yeah, something like that. Either way, a lot. I don't know how big these are, but we had one for Iron Lung. There was a reason because we needed to have a hydraulic, like thingamabob, you know, because Iron Lung is a sub, and so we're having it go. So it's a gigantic hydraulic. We needed one of those just to power the hydraulics to get there. And let me tell you, that thing burned gas like a goddamn beast. And that was probably a small one. These things are as big as tractor trailers, and I'm sure that's what they have, right? I said this, I believe, one of the things that people, if you've been listening to Distractable and watching about it, especially the past like 6 months straight, anytime that I do talk about it, it's to talk about the dangers of it or how scary it is or how bad it is or how it's misunderstood. And that's not misunderstood to be like, oh, this is such a good thing, you just need to get used to it. No. If people have actually been listening to what I was talking about, and I get it that what happens is, and I was talking to some people about this, is oftentimes when there's a question about it, I talk about it first because I know more about it. I don't know everything about it, but I do know enough about it to know that it's not what the majority of the population thinks it is. And by knowing about it, people assume that I'm using it all the time and in my content and everything like that. That's not the case. But I know about it, right? Because I want to learn more about it because I know that there probably is a better way about it, right? Okay. So when you come down to me making that a step before there, I will say in riddles and rhymes, there probably is a misconception here, but I'm going to give people the benefit of the doubt because if you look up riddles and rhymes on Google, which is plagued by AA right now, you look up riddles and rhymes and you'll see that it looks like it was posted December 20th, 2024. That video is from April 24th, 2023, or that episode is from more than 2 years ago. And the reason that I say the timeline is important is because I am, I'm a fan of tech. I'm not super into it all the time, but I do like it. I built computers ever since my dad, from a very young age. My dad built computers and he was already around computers. So computers were in my life since I was 5 years old. So I'm a fan of technology. I always keep up with the things that are going on. And at this point, when this episode came out, April 24th, 2023, this was admittedly probably the first time that people after the episode came out were like, hey, I don't know if this was cool and I don't think that this should be done, which is a good point. That is a good point that people were making. And that is something that I took to heart, which is why from then on, I tried my very best to make sure. And by very best, it doesn't mean like it never happened because there's a Cake or AI video came out, but that was to promote things that I just said before. It was to promote awareness of it and the yada yada. But I tried my very best to make sure that my messaging around it was from an artist's perspective. Now, whether I'm an artist or not is debatable. But at the time, I would step back just slightly before that to the funniest joke in the world. Now, the funniest joke in the world came out in 2022, right? And that was with something called Talk to Transformer. Now, if you remember Talk to Transformer, that video, that episode is fucking hilarious. That video is unabashedly funny. It is absolutely funny because of how bad it was. The language model that was being used for Talk to Transformer is not like the direct relation to ChatGPT, but it is one of the precursors using the same kind of concepts. And it was terrible, obviously. It made that knock-knock joke. That episode is funny. And me saying that isn't me going, yes, yeah, woo, yeah, it is. It's funny. And if you look up with riddles and rhymes, there's actually plenty of people that were like, this might be one of the funniest episodes ever. And it was for other reasons, and it's not something that I'm like, see, it can be funny. No, it's because at the time it was so bad that you could make fun of it, right? Now it's so good that it's scary. And there is that fear that brings the timeline into focus because there's reasons to be afraid. I don't think there's reasons to be as afraid as people are, but there are reasons to be aware of it.